Update. Husband 33 male and I 26 female were child-free. Then took in his sister's kids. Now I'm pregnant and terrified. Original story. I was always on the fence about kids until I met my husband 6 years ago. He made it clear he does not want kids at all, but I agreed to be with him without having kids. A few years ago, his sister was deemed unfit to parent. She was a single mother to a preteen girl and a young boy, and their caseworker asked how we would feel about taking them in. I said that I was in favor, as growing up my life was nearly identical. Parents deemed unfit and taken in by my aunt, which was the best thing for me. But I let my husband make the final choice, as they're his family, and he's the one who was resolute on being child-free. He said that we could take them, but told me that I would need to do the kid stuff, meaning everything from discipline to doctor visits. I agreed. Right from the time they moved in, he began distancing himself. He'd stay late at work or shut himself in the office all day, and barely interact with his niece and nephew, while I, as promised, handled all the kid stuff. However, him distancing himself upset them, and when I would bring this up to him, he would only ever respond that he was child-free, and I knew what I signed up for. The full legal adoption was completed last year, and the kids have been in therapy since we took them in. 4 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. My husband said that we could keep the baby and he would be involved. But once I was past the termination deadline, said that the same rules apply to this child as to his niece and nephew, and he claimed otherwise before this as he didn't want me to terminate. I don't want this. It's not like I intentionally got pregnant. It was an accident, and I was fine being child-free if it meant I got to be with him. But life clearly had other plans, and I love all 3 of these kids. I can see how much it hurts the older kids for their uncle/legal father to completely ignore them, and I don't want that for the baby. But I feel completely trapped and I don't see a way out. I don't expect to change my husband's mind on kids, but is there anything I can do to improve the situation for anyone involved? Now for the top advice before reading the update. He's not child-free at all. He's responsibility-free. I just want to say that I don't think there's anything wrong with not wanting kids because you don't want the responsibility. But there is something very, very wrong with putting that responsibility all on someone else and having the nerve to call yourself a parent. What? He dumped his family issues on you to appease your want for children and then locked himself away. And when you got pregnant, he hid information from you about his feelings on it so you wouldn't terminate. Excuse me? I know he's child-free, but then don't bring 3 freaking kids into your house. He wasn't fair to you and stupid. Wow, what a display of the intelligence and foresight of the human race. Your husband is already threatening your niece and nephew with negative feelings of self-worth, and all that comes with not caring about them and hating the idea of them. They're definitely not in the best parenting scenario despite the tons of hard work I'm sure you're doing. Imagine what that'd be like with another kid. It's your baby, but I think you might have to bottom line this. Either he is completely present for the baby and his goddamn niece and nephew, now his son and daughter legally may add, because he said so before so you wouldn't terminate, or there will be consequences. He needs to live with the result of his actions and he needs to step above his pettiness. My 3 problems are these. He expected you to take on the entire burden for his niece and nephew, which are his family, so it should be his concern first and foremost. He hasn't stepped above his wish to be child-free to help his niece and nephew, even though he said it wasn't his job. That's not a fair position to put you in. Said he's literally locked himself in his room, like a teenager throwing a tantrum. Finally, he lied to you. About your own kid. He said he would be present for it, which should be obvious, which was a lie only so you wouldn't terminate the child. So you didn't, and you're pretty much irreversibly pregnant. For what reason exactly? What does he get out of this but another child to avoid? So he needs to grow up and be there for his niece and nephew, and be a father for your/his baby. It's the least he could do. If your husband didn't want children and didn't have a vasectomy and continued to be intimate with you, then he's as responsible for his child as you are, and he needs to step up and handle the situation he is in, not the mythical situation he wishes he was in. If you have a child, you step up and be a parent. If you adopt children, they are yours, and you have to step up. Neglect is mistreatment. Placing all the parenting responsibilities on you is emotional abuse. Thinking that it's at all acceptable to ignore his own child is almost sociopathic. It was also greatly harm the child. If he doesn't see the need for at least going to some counseling to deal with the fact that, like most of us, his reality doesn't meet up with what he thought it would be, then I don't know what you can do to change his mind. Are there any parents, siblings, or good friends you can ask for help to get him to go talk to a professional with you? The birth control situation was complicated, but it does take two to tango, and I made a choice to take his niece and nephew in. I don't think he's a sociopath, and I don't think he's intended to mistreat anyone, but that's the effect he's had on us. He doesn't see counseling as a legitimate avenue, and all of our extended family relationships are complicated in one way or another, so I'm not sure how much help reaching out would be. And now for the update. As I stated in my first post, my family situation is complicated, and the family members I feel that I could turn to in a crisis form a very short list. I tried contacting my husband's parents and asking them for help. As while we had our issues, I figured that helping their grandchildren would take priority. Not only would they not help, but they informed my husband that I was planning to leave him. This caused a fight the day after my first post, in which my husband and I both said some things, and it doesn't look like we're going to come back from it. I'm still working through my feelings on that. After the fight, I reached out to my aunt, and she told me to contact my grandparents who live nearby. I was hesitant as I have no real relationship with them and struggle to consider them family, so I was hardly expecting a warm welcome. But that is what I got. It was awkward as I've only met them a few times in my entire life, but they seemed happy to see me. They were a little shocked that I had a preteen and young child with me, but seem equally happy to have adopted great-grandkids as they are at the baby on the way. The kids and I are looking into other living arrangements, but we're safe for now. Thank you for the responses to my first post. It wasn't easy to read, but I had to hear it. I wasn't even going to update, but some of you were just so nice about it that I felt like I had to. Wow, I was so angry at your ex-husband reading the other post. It's one thing not to want to do all the organizing and practical stuff for kids, another to emotionally neglect them entirely. And lying to you during your pregnancy so you wouldn't terminate? What a piece of work. Don't feel guilty about getting all the child support you can from that waste of skin. I'm a random Reddit user, and I approve this message. As so many others pointed out on the original post, that man was using being child-free as an excuse to neglect his kids. Once you agree to take in 2 kids, you no longer get to be child-free. Normally, I only lurk, but that prick move from his parents was just horrendous. Wow. Don't let them see the kids or contact them. If they want a relationship with them, they can have it on his time after custody is arranged, unless of course he doesn't want any time, in which case let them sleep in the bed they made. Screw them. I honestly thought I would be safe enough with his parents. I knew they didn't like me, but they also had a poor relationship with my husband, but loved kids. So I figured that all of that combined would result in them at the very least not telling him. We haven't discussed it, but I already know that he won't want any custody. I just don't know what to do about his parents. As the kids have already lost so many people, I don't want to be the reason they lose their grandparents. You won't be the reason they lose their grandparents. Their grandparents will cause it. Wow, so you took his sister's kids too. You sound like a saint. I wasn't going to leave them with him. The youngest calls me mom. They are my kids, as far as I'm concerned. I have also legally adopted them, so I'm in the clear in that too. Saint is definitely an overstatement though, lol. Make sure your soon-to-be ex pays child support for all 3 kids. They deserve the support money. I know, I'm going to sort it. My grandparents offered to help me with any legal fees to make sure I've got full custody and child support, get my things back from the house, and I don't get screwed over the divorce. I just need a minute before I can think about divorcing. Now for the next story. I hate my son and I want to leave my wife. My wife and I never wanted children, and when she got pregnant, it was a shock. I have a naturally low sperm count, which made vasectomy pretty moot and with my confidence in rubbers. My wife did a 180 and told me she loved the child and wanted to have it. I was shocked and tried to convince her to no avail. He's 2 now, my son, and while my wife loves him, I only harbor resentment. I know I was at fault for his existence, but I blame my wife as well, because she clearly wasn't on the same page as me. I've been going to therapy to cope, and the therapist said there was nothing to fix. Not wanting a child isn't a problem, and I need to take a step back from it all. After discussing with him, he told me to take a break from the whole family for some time and see. If I enjoyed it, I would know my answer. The feeling of no longer being with my son was the best thing in my life. My wife and I have been hashing things out as well because of my clear discomfort. I'm thinking of divorcing her. I'm not happy with her anymore and I want to move on. I would obviously still pay child support, which leads me to my question. If I divorce her and give up custody, should I be involved in my son's life? Now for the advice. No. If you don't want him and don't love him, he'll know that. Kids aren't dumb. He'll be better off if you leave. Pay your required support payments and don't complicate his life. As someone whose father left me at 11, I agree. I grew up resenting my absent dad, but now I'm 26 and rarely think about it. Just leave. Don't reach out to make yourself feel better. My father abandoned us when I was a toddler and kept showing up every so often to prove he was involved. It was a nightmare. I left my ex last year because I didn't want to be a dad and he was a horrible person. He is mad I left him, so he fights for visitation and I have to let him take our son. Son is almost 2 years old. I am worried that our son will be more hurt by his father's lame attempts at pretending he wants to be a dad, versus if his dad left and he never saw him again. Honestly, it seems like you have to leave. Pay your child support and stay gone. Anytime you come popping back in out of guilt or whatever, and maybe you're just going to add more trauma to your son's life. If you're leaving, stay gone and make payments. I don't know what else to say. If I had an award, I would give it to you. Partner's dad popped in out of guilt throughout childhood and spread rumors about mom. It's a living hell. Stay gone. Now for the last story. My 35 female husband 35 male seems to think childcare has nothing to do with him. So, we have 3 kids, 7-year-old boy, 4-year-old girl, and 7-month boy. Childcare has always been my problem to handle, even though I have not wanted it to be. Admittedly though, I am definitely the one who does a lot of this type of stuff in the house. It has been probably my largest source of stress over the past few years because childcare in America is awful. I have been lucky to have had a lot of help from family, but ultimately have not had reliable help for long over the years, and have been stuck making it work as best as I can through time off, work from home, and even having times where my kids are sitting in virtual meetings with me. My husband leaves for work early in the morning. I am an executive at a tech startup, and I have been lucky to have a lot of flexibility in my work, but ultimately it is a very high-pressure job. This past few weeks have been a disaster. Due to challenges with care, I hired an additional babysitter who ended up being an absolute nightmare. We should not have her babysitting our kids, not because they're unsafe, other reasons for this, but I'm so desperate I'm having her come still until I find other care. I figure I'm home so I can at least supervise. Our other childcare provider quits with no notice. Personal issues, definitely not us. So I was staring down a full work week with no childcare. I brought this up to my husband last night and he kind of just shut down. We went back and forth, but ultimately when I told him I might need him to take a day off of work to help, he just said he couldn't take a day off. I pointed out to him that I couldn't just take a week off without notice and my job matters too. In fact, I'm the primary breadwinner. He just walked away and left it at that. So I texted him today again to broach the topic, like 50 times now that I've brought up this problem that I don't know what to do, and again told him that I can't do this week without help. He hasn't responded yet, but it really got me thinking about how unacceptable this is. We've had 7 years of this. I have had multiple sobbing fits of stress. I've always kind of thought that he would help if I would let him, but I was the problem because I just did it all. But then here I am begging him for help over the past few weeks, and he is just ignoring me? I'm thinking if he doesn't respond to my text today and avoids it, that I'm going to ask for a separation. I honestly do think I would never find someone that I love as much as him. What we have is genuinely really special. But I just feel like this crosses a line of disrespect for me. It's one thing to say can't take off work and sit down and start offering ideas, but he just legit left this problem for me to deal with, and continues to do so despite having time to collect his thoughts. One thing I want to note, so that he doesn't get raked through the coals, he is going through a really tough time right now. His mom, who he has a strained relationship with, is slowly dying and has been more difficult than ever. His dad has gotten really mean and difficult as well. It has been brutal this past few weeks. So, I mean, am I crazy? Is this just something where he's so stressed he's just unplugging? I just don't even know. Edited to add. A few clarifications here. Husband is definitely an involved dad and partner. Some people have pointed out that I listed the fun stuff that he does, and that's valid. It definitely got me thinking. He does the unfun stuff, but it absolutely takes nagging for me. I already have him reading Fair Play, and I also am going to ask that we start up marriage counseling. What we have is genuinely really special. He just walked away and left it at that? Not sure I believe it's special enough to put up with this. He won't even have the conversation? How can you fix a problem he won't even talk about? How can you fix any problem if you won't talk about it? I couldn't deal with that in a relationship myself. Well, he just texted me a full apology for how he reacted and started jumping to ideas for her to reach out to. That's the problem sometimes. It just takes 24 hours to get to where we should have been yesterday. I'm gonna be blunt here. What you have isn't that special. If he doesn't give a damn that his wife is breaking down sobbing over the stress of caring for kids that are 50% his, it stonewalls you when you try to hold him accountable for doing his share around the house. Love is a smaller part of marriage than partnership. It just is. And he's a bad partner. I would sit him down and calmly tell him that you have already contemplated divorce over this issue, and that if he does not pitch in to help with the kids, it will eventually end your marriage. I agree with everything you said, except I would lose my crap on him. In my experience, continuing to be polite in situations like this just doesn't work. Always being polite is hurting us. The disrespect continues. The refusal to see us as women continues because there is no consequence. OP, I want to say that I feel horribly for you, watching this man's back as it turned it towards you yet again. I'm sorry that he did that to you.